Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to A to Z Running. Welcome, everyone, to the A to Z Running podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
I'm Zach.
Today on the A to Z Running podcast, we are talking about seasons of racing with Olli Hoare, who's a professional runner with On Athletics Club and is an Australian record holder.
And 3 things that you want to think about while you're listening to that conversation. Racing, like fitness, happens in stages over time. Interesting reflections on that. Races help us learn, and Ollie's going to talk about how he has learned some incredible lessons from his racing experiences, and racing is never a solo effort. More to come on that.
Very good. Well, in the world of running, we have an Australian record. This time it's not Olli, but we look forward to more from him too, and 2 massive marathon PRs from A to Z athletes.
Absolutely. So make sure you go to AtoZrunning.com, click the word follow, and then on YouTube and all those other places where you can find things like podcasts, subscribe. And then hit like the notification stuffs because, you know, whoever remembers to go look at the things they're subscribed to and watch or listen. Do all of that and then post comments, post questions, and share your thoughts so that we can talk about you behind your back and sometimes even in front of your face. Like right now with this comment. This was a question from Laura on our most recent episode prior to this one when we were talking about avoiding injury and how you can train to do that. Laura had a legitimate question because we were discussing easy running and the importance of doing easy things for easy runs. And Laura asked this: if I'm in a phase of training where I'm just building easy base miles and don't need to preserve myself for hard workout days, ... it's okay to raise the floor a bit on my basic easy mileage pace, right? Okay, well, Laura, we're not going to affirm you're right there. Now, perhaps that is true, but I want to back out because these kinds of questions have more complex answers than just simply saying yes. And the answer is not yes. The point isn't necessarily preserving yourself. So when you're talking about like your base kind of, I'm just running and I'm just trying to kind of keep up the running and do it well so that when I have a goal, you know, that's kind of the essence of what I'm interpreting from your question here, Laura. And I would say that in all things, when you're just trying to maintain base, you're really fundamentally doing the exact same thing that any good conditioning phase does, which is foremost, the most valuable thing you can do is run more slower, not less faster, because you're trying to, this base concept, which we're really talking about then, your aerobic condition, and you're just trying to keep that up. Well, as you might guess, the best way, the most efficient way to keep up your aerobic condition is by running longer, slower, rather than shorter, faster. Now, there's some kind of balance here, and that balance happens to be when you don't run the same distance and pace every day, because that then, of course, is not very efficient. So instead, you do a little bit shorter run one day, a little bit longer run the next day. And you guessed it, when you run shorter, go a little faster. When you run longer, go a little slower. And never forget to include neuromuscular activation. That's something you should be doing year-round. And it's an easy thing to do anytime, anywhere. And if you don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen or watch to the previous episode. That would have been episode 78, where we talked about avoiding injury. And if you didn't scroll down on the website to Laura's comment, you need to, because we only just shared her question. She also has a great story about ghosts in her basement.
Oh.
And that's all I'm going to say.
All right. Well, leaving the suspense there for us. We also announced the giveaway winners, and I'm going to link to that too. If you won, I reached out to you. So that's how you know. But if you want to see who won, who you're envious of, that's going to be running at Rivertown races, or maybe your competition because you use the A to Z running code to get your discount, you'll be able to see that there at AtoZrunning.com. So let's move on to some exciting news in the world of running. Well, big congratulations are in order for the A to Z runners who raced at Carmel Marathon. And those people are Nikki and Andrew. Now, both of them ran massive PRs. Nikki,
Sizable.
yes, sizable PRs. Nikki ran a 9-minute PR and Andrew ran a 10-minute PR in the marathon, and both qualified for Boston for the first time.
Excellent.
So exciting.
So many. Is it many congratulations or big congratulations? Well, it's many big congratulations
Yes.
for Nikki and Andrew. And we thought, what would be very valuable in terms of, because we are always looking for the practical thing that helps anyone listening to this episode, we thought, how about Nikki and Andrew share with you one thing that they did differently training for this race than past ones that they thought made a difference. And so they did indeed share that one thing, and just to make sure we did not intentionally or try to contrive a plug for our support and services. That was not the goal of this thing, but instead to find something practical that they did that helped them, and maybe it could help you too. So let's hear from Nikki and Andrew.
Hi, Zach. Hi, Andy. It's Nikki here. I am just giving you a little recap from the marathon in Carmel on Saturday. I have to say, wow, what a beautiful day. I could not ask for better weather to help set this PR up for me. And you asked me today, Andy, what was it that helped me PR this time around versus other marathons that I've run? And quite frankly, I've never trained so hard for anything in my life. I have never run so many miles and trained this hard for any race or marathon that I've done before. So I think honestly, just putting in the miles and the commitment, the dedication to it, and the support from the both of you were a huge influence on my PR. I mean, our conversation the day before was super helpful. I am a factual person, so Zach, when you laid it out and said, this is how many miles you've run, this is the evidence we have, this supports your marathon goal, I had to believe that. So I believe facts. So that was one reason that helped me get in the mindset that I could do it. So thank you both for your support over the last 4 months, and what a cool experience. So I hope there's another PR in my future. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, Andrew Buchema here with a quick race recap of the 2021 Carmel Marathon that happened on Saturday, April 3 down in Carmel, Indiana. I'm really happy to say that it was definitely a PR day for me, finishing at 3:02:18. My original plan was to stick with the 3:10 pacer. His body felt fantastic and great, all due to the training that Zach and Andy gave me. So a huge shout out to AtoZrunning and their coaching. Really what brought me through was the amount of training and doing it by time and the hours, and as the miles were ticking away, I'm just like, oh, I just got 2 more hours left. I got 1 more hour left, and had that in me. So another shout out to my StellaFly teammate, Mark Magyar, who was there at mile 21 to cheer me on. So a huge day for Team StellaFly and AtoZrunning. So great day, lots of PRs for our other friend Nikki, who is also coached by A to Z. So thanks guys for all the coaching, and it was a great day. I'm looking forward to the next race. Thanks.
Thank you both for sharing your experiences at Carmel Marathon, and congratulations again. It was an honor to be in a front row seat to see you guys smash your goals.
Front row virtual seat.
Virtual,
as it
yes.
were. All right, on April 4th in Istanbul, Turkey, a new world record went down in the women's road race half marathon.
World record. You heard that right.
That is the truth. So reported by Runner's World, we're talking about Ruth Chepngetich in a half marathon record now in a time of 1:04:02. That's right. For a half marathon for the women, 1:04 is indeed the new, and she nearly broke 1:04, which is just an incredible thing. That would have qualified her for the men's Olympic trials in the United States for the marathon.
Wow.
4:53 per mile. That means that she trounced the previous world record by a sizable 29 seconds as well.
I just can't even believe that. I can't even wrap my head around that kind of pace. But also in that same race, 5,000 meter world champion Helen Obiri finished third in 104.51, which is the fastest half marathon debut for a woman ever.
Okay, so that's her first half marathon.
Yeah, so that means that three
man.
women. That means 3 women ran under 65 minutes.
That's incredible.
Moving down to where our guest is from, Australia held the Box Hill Classic, and Lyndon Hall got a new Australian 1,500 meter record. And that was a time of 3:59.67. So she did break that 4-minute barrier for the 1,500.
That's fast. First female Australian to do that.
Yeah.
And there aren't very many people in the world in the history of time who have run under 4 minutes in a 1,500. So congrats to Lyndon Hall, not to be confused with Jessica Hull, who is the other Australian breaking lots of records recently.
And they've been pushing each other to new heights. It's been cool to see.
Absolutely is. Speaking of places other than the United States, April 3rd in Barrowford, England, Scotland's Beth Potter, who is best known as a triathlete, but she is a very fast runner as well. So we should not exclude the fact that she runs fast times. This is not just
world-class
triathlon.
times.
Yes. Well, she ran 14:41 in a road 5K for a new unofficial world road 5K record. A number of significant things about that. First, it's not actually the fastest time a woman has run in a road 5K. Namely, it was Joycelyn Jepkoske who ran in a 10K 14:32 for 5K. So she was running a 10K but ran 14:30. Yes, but it was in a different race, and it was prior to when World Athletics actually started recognizing the road 5K as a record, which was only in 2018.
Okay.
So there are things here that we should know. Like, there are lots of people who run fast road 5Ks, but it's not part of the record period, so it wasn't recognized.
And why isn't this one part of the record books now?
Beth Potter's time most likely will not actually be the official record because the race did not fall under the many myriad constraints and restrictions that are required to make it a record's legal event.
Okay.
Like drug testing on site, which was not present, the lap size of the course, which was not long enough, and certainly a number of other factors because it just wasn't that kind of race. And Beth herself said in many interviews that she was not anticipating running that fast anyway.
Wow.
So the fact that she did is wonderful, and hopefully she can do it again elsewhere so that she can get the record. It should be noted as well that she was wearing ASIC's brand new Super Shoe and talked a lot about how she thought that was a wonderful piece of footwear and helped her along in the process. And in case you aren't familiar with that shoe, we've got a video that you can watch if you want to learn more about it.
Interesting. Well, I hope all of us have those kinds of surprises. Oh, wait, surprise! You ran fast enough to be a world record.
Nothing
that
like
is a
that.
crazy surprise. I love it.
So speaking of lots of good things happening in the world of running, we've got a great conversation coming up for you talking about racing season. So let's get to that in our main topic. So in discussing racing season, we're going to break this into a 2-part conversation, just so you know. So we want to hear from Olli first to talk about his experiences, and then next time around, we're going to really break it down and apply it to our own in terms of the universal common runners experiences and how we think about racing. And so in thinking about our conversation with Olli here, there are 3 things we want you to really be contemplating while you're listening. First, racing, like fitness, happens in stages, and that's important. And it's not a common phenomenon in many of our racing experiences, but it might need to be more common for a number of positive reasons. So listen to Olli talk about that. Also, races help us learn. And so how do you learn from races? Olli has some great and practical tips there. And then, of course, racing, like everything else in running, is not a solo effort, despite the fact that you may indeed be doing things on your own and feel like you are very much alone in different kinds of experiences in running. We know that community matters.
Yeah. So we appreciated what Olli had to say about that. Before we get to the interview, I do want to highlight for you that he is the Australian 1,500 meter indoor record holder. That happened very recently and very fresh. So he's on fire. You're going to want to take note of him as we go into this Olympic year. He also runs for OAC. You've heard of a couple people on this podcast who run for On Athletic Club. That's coached by Dathan Ritzenhein. He has a couple soil records here in the U.S., including Colorado soil record. And I do want to mention that 1,500 meter time was the 6th fastest in the world's history.
In indoors.
In indoor racing. So amazingly fast, and more to come. He's going to tell you a little bit how he navigates this racing season. So if you want to know more about Olli, I did put more of his bio on AtoZrunning.com, and you'll want to check that out.
All right, well, let's talk with Olli Hoare.
Hi, Olli. Welcome to the A to Z Running podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, you've had a big year. 2 years, because 2020 has been awesome. 2021 has been awesome. So first of all, congratulations. We just told our audience all about you and your accolades, and we're excited to dig into this topic of race execution and what it looks like during a season of races. So a lot of us, we look at a race, a goal race, and sometimes we don't know what to do to be good in the in-between and good leading up to it, because you have a lot going on as a track and field athlete where you're racing multiple times, you're needing to get qualifications, and you have great opportunities that come up that you want to snatch. So let's start first with what a race season looks like for you, Olli.
Yeah, so for me, coming out of college, it's a very different experience as a professional athlete, because I think you have those seasons of cross country, indoor and outdoor, track and field, and you kind of get selected and say, okay, this is what the coach wants you to do. These are the events leading up to conference championships and NCAA championships. Well, as a pro, there is flexibility in where you want to race, but there is a lot of racing. And the continuity of it is kind of different, because for me now, predominantly as a track athlete, you're racing track throughout the whole year, which is a cool thing. And I think for me, that racing schedule obviously is very different now with COVID and the pandemic and the situation that we're all in. But it usually looks like you start like an indoor season during the winter time. You try and get in races in good enough competition to hopefully race at the World Indoor Championships, which was unfortunately postponed. And then moving forward, it's just kind of leading out to that outdoor experience of trials, going back home for national selection championships. And then obviously, if you're lucky and fortunate enough, racing those big, Gold Continental Tour, races, and then also Diamond Leagues are big races to kind of lead towards. That would usually be in the schedule throughout the year. And then from there, you kind of lead in towards the big race, which is World Championships, Olympic Games, which is currently with Tokyo this year. And then also for me personally, Commonwealth Games is Pan Am Championships for North Americans, and European Championships. So I think the way which the professional season is scheduled is that it's all the lead up towards that big one race, which is usually near the end of summer, August, September is when those big races usually happen. And I think a lot of those great races beforehand are just kind of seen as a very, very live, prestigious trial and error situation. You get to learn your competition, you get to know where you are, and then you lead up to that big race. It's kind of the goal for most athletes kind of leading into that season. So you'd like to have a few more races, kind of knowing where you are as an athlete, where you are training wise, and also where your coach can see you when you lead up to those big goals later down in the season.
So what's the approach in terms of like how you strategize those earlier season races? Because those are the tough moments where you need to be fit, to run qualifying times and things like that. At a lot of different points during the year. But obviously you have, kind of a big target where you really want to be in the best shape possible. But what does it look like when you're doing those races that aren't necessarily those big targets?
So usually for those type of races, it's funny because the way I looked at it out of college is like, you're going to be at the top shape for for those races and then move forward. And learning with Dathan, it's been quite cool, because he says you're at this shape, you're at say 332 shape, 334 shape, you're at this shape leading into this race. That's where we want to be. We don't want to be at 329 shape. We don't want to be at world beater shape. We want to be at 332 shape at that kind of point in time. And having someone like that who's gone through that experience countless amount of times is very, very valuable. And the one thing that's tough is to think like you want to get to your goal as quickly as possible. Everyone wants to be at that big race. They visualize it all the time. but it's those stepping stones that are so crucial towards the development of that season in general. Because if you're fortunate enough to race such great competition, be in great races, really it's all about that experience and kind of getting to know yourself, where you are in your training and what you need to improve on. Because every race, regardless if you win it or if you come dead last, you got to learn something from it to take to the next race, because that way, as you develop your season, it's going to be a better outcome for you in that longer term goal of the world championships or that big race that you want to kind of smash. So for us, it was all about getting to a state of fitness that was appropriate for that time of year, because unfortunately we have to come down, take a break, and then get back into that kind of training, of that strength training, to get to that next kind of stepping block. And for us, for example, for me, coming off a great kind of introduction into a pro year with On Athletics Club and with Dathan, he kind of said, let's get to this stage. Let's get to New York. Let's get to an indoor race where you can run this time. Obviously, it was a bit quicker than what we expected, but it was definitely what we wanted to do for a stepping stone moving forward, because then, hopefully we get to Diamond Leagues, we get to races in Eugene, LA, and then hopefully Tokyo. So those stepping blocks are really crucial. And I think the best thing, sorry, my dog's running around. The best thing to do is to move forward and just really learn about yourself as an athlete, learn about where you are, and just really take in everything you get from every race. And I think that's one thing I learned collegiately really well, but professionally a lot better, having Dathan kind of mentor me through that, because being a professional athlete, you kind of don't understand that, like, every race you get is very, very valuable. So those early races are just as crucial, but to prepare for them, you just go through that training that you know is going to get you to that point, and then move you forward to the next stage.
So I'm curious, because we do hear in conversations about races, especially from higher level athletes, we hear a lot that conversation about something, you're trying to learn from things in those earlier races, find your weaknesses, and then, do something about it so that won't be the case in the future. Can you give us an example? Does anything come to mind, and something that has or might happen in a race that tells you, okay, there's an area of weakness, something we need to work on, and what you would do about that?
Yeah, definitely. For me personally, when I went back home, I did a mile race, the Albie Thomas Mile, which is a race in New South Wales and Sydney, Australia. And I was on very, very hard training at this point, and we were just using this race as like, it was a good thing for me to get involved in that kind of race for the community. And I was excited to race about it. But I got a really bad start. I crucially made a mistake in that last 200 meters of the mile, where I went too early and I made myself very vulnerable. And that race I took away as like, it wasn't my best race, but I was able to learn from that. And then I took that into New York, and I noticed that I think 3 laps to go, I was behind Jake Whiteman, and I felt this big urge to pass him, to keep going. But in the back of my head, I told myself, look what happened in Albie Thomas, obviously different situation, but just wait and see what happens. And I waited, and I learned from that experience, and I corrected myself. And then I came away with the result that I wanted. I actually pulled away in the end and closed very well. So I took that away as a confidence thing of, okay, I can learn from something. Because sometimes you can go into races and you go, oh, I did it again. Like, I did the same thing and I'm not learning from it. Like, all the training you can do. I mean, the one thing that I always tell myself is that a bad race is better than a good training session. Like, every race you take in, and if you can take something out of it, it really, really helps you move forward. And I think that, for me, an example was really good, especially racing such talented guys. You can't make mistakes like that. Like, it's just like a very, 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 very small chance of you getting away with it. So that was an example for me. And that's something that I pride myself on, is to be self-aware. My coach, Dathan, will always call me out and rip into me if I need it, but I'll try and adjust it first and tell him first, so he knows. Because as an athlete, I'm always growing and learning, and starting out as a pro, I think that's the best thing for me moving forward when I come into more racing down the road.
That was profound. I even wrote it down so that I don't forget to highlight it. Oh, that's fantastic. So viewing it as a learning experience, these early races, do you elevate when you come to like the big race? Do you view them differently? Do you prepare differently mentally? Can you kind of talk us through how you approach these races and if there are any differences?
Yeah, there are definitely differences, but you don't want to make them you don't want to kind of, you don't want it to overwhelm you. The one thing that I noticed for me, especially when I was racing NCAA championships, was that at the end of the day, it's the same race. Sometimes you're racing the same people, and you need to make sure you account for that. But then, of course, you don't want to be underwhelmed going into a big race like that. And I think that build up, for me, it's always about excitement. So if you start somewhere, earlier on that year when you've made mistakes, and then you gradually, each race you're getting better, you're learning from them, and then you make it to your end result, your big race. For you should be excited because look how far you've come. You should be able to look back and reminisce about what you've done, and then that mental rehearsal of everything that you've learned, putting it together like a puzzle. It all fits into place. You're happy, you're confident. You take confidence in your training and your coaching yourself, and then let the nerves come, because the nerves will come. I think the one thing that athletes struggle with is the nerves and the lead up. You're sitting in the hotel, you're 4 hours away out from racing, and you're nervous, you feel terrible. And that's the one thing that if you embrace it and think, well, this is what I do, this is why I get to that point. And I know my body's just telling me that I'm getting ready to do the same thing that I've done, and I've perfected my craft. I think that's the one thing that you should look at it differently, is that you should be excited because you've made it all this way. And at the end of the day, like, you will put your best foot forward if you mentally believe that you will. Like, I think a lot of people, and I've been a victim to this, kind of doubt it when you've gone through that far and you start thinking about the excuses or the mistakes that you might have made in the past. But the one thing that I know is that when you get there, you've done all the work. You're there, you're ready. You just got to enjoy it and have fun, because it's a very rare and limited experience to be able to race and do events like that. And I know a lot of athletes will attest to that. And that's the one thing that gets me excited about those big races. So I think the excitement level should be different. The nerves should just be, you just take it on, you embrace it and look at your progress. I think the one thing of those small races is they're all building blocks to a foundation of a great race. I remember watching many athletes, Matt Sensuowitz, and then older athletes like Seb Coe and Steve Ovett, who were British rivals, that every build-up they had to the Olympic Games or Commonwealth Games championships, they used to write down in their diary they always made mistakes. They were mad because one of them beat the other. And then once they got to the big races, they noticed that all those mistakes, they were happy and grateful for them because they weren't making them to get through the final and get through those stages. So, it's all about perfecting the craft. I think it's just people think running is just a, pretty mundane thing, but I think it is actually much more skill when you look at the mental side of it, more than anything. So yeah, that's how I kind of look at it now since coming out of college and then being under Dathan as well.
That's huge. So thinking of that mental side of it and the excitement and the nerves, you're in a situation now, Olli, and I don't think I'm being presumptuous when I say that anytime you step on a track, there's a possibility you could be breaking a record. Mm-hmm. You're fit enough now where you could be breaking Australian records in just about any event that you do. And I'm curious if that changes some of that reflection, because even if it's not, that the 332, for example, even if it's not like the key race, you're still in good enough shape that you could be running records that, these are big things. Does it change that at all for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think after New York, I didn't realize what I actually done. I don't think my family did either, because when I went back in, I spoke to my agent, Ray Flynn, who was a miler and a 1,500 meter runner back in the old days. And he's seen so many races before, and he was, punching me around, really excited about it. And I look back and I was like a second and a bit off the world record at that point indoors. But it's a nuts experience, because once you take that step, you think, okay, there's got to be a limit here. There's got to be a situation where you're not going to improve. But I think for me, I've learned so much that you embrace that kind of experience of every race you go out could be a record-breaking experience. But for you personally, it's got to be something that's leading towards your goals. And now, speaking to Dathan and myself, my goals have kind of been elevated from the situation that we once were in, because now that I'm running a 332 indoor 1500, I'm put up at second best in the world currently, and then leading into getting opportunities to race against some amazingly talented people. So it does shift it, and it can overwhelm you a bit. But that's the one thing that I'm very lucky to have people like Dathan in my corner, because he tells me sometimes you got to ground yourself and say, you've done all the work, you know how to get there, don't lose your way, kind of thing. And being a guy that's a 3-time Olympian and a former 5K American record holder, so a legend in his own right, he knows what it's been like to kind of have that mantle on you and to be able to adjust and to think about it. And he's made mistakes in that past too. So it's cool to have him, because he looks at every race and says, don't think about the records or the ranking or the points. Just think about who you're beating. Think about the race. Think about what you can do and your personal best, your best effort at that point in time. And I think he says, and then afterwards, if you look at the clock and you see a little NR next to it or a little WL or something like that, he said, that's just a bonus. And at 24 years of age, it got overwhelming for me, especially after New York, because I thought, wow, like, this is nuts. I don't know how to deal with this. Especially back home in Australia, it kind of went nuts, because indoor is such a small thing. We don't get to do much indoor racing, so it was cool to have that. And we had a lot of records broken at that point. So it was creating a lot of buzz. And for me to have Dathan reel me in and say, we got a goal to do, we want to make Tokyo. People will get excited about that stuff, but let's move forward and let's take the next step. And you're 100% right. It can get you excited, and the nerves can kick in, and you think, well, every race I go into can be a world record race. But I think the one thing that we're looking at is just like, every race I want to go into, I want to make sure that I do the best possible race I can for that point in time, and then take everything out of it and then move on to the next one and try and build on what I've learned from it. So, but it is exciting. I mean, it's great for Australian athletics as well. And yeah, I'm just happy to be a part of it and to be able to have this opportunity to do it.
Yes, definitely. If I can reflect just a moment, I really appreciate that advice from Dathan, because it's hard. Perspective is difficult with these kinds of things. And there's not many people who can relate to your experience, right? Because there aren't that many people who have historically ever been in a position where they are record breakers. So that being the case, though, everything we do with running always happens in two contexts at once. The first is the immediate, and that's what Dathan's advice is, which is, as a racer, our first responsibility is to the moment and to attending to the goal and the purpose of the moment. And that has very little to do with records in most instances. There will be some instances where you might say, our goal here today is simply to break a record, and we set up a race to do just that. But that's not the case, in most instances. And then the second context is that historical one, which is, that's the thing you get to enjoy by achieving the first goal, and you're responsible to the first moment. And when as he says, when the clock happens to say NR at the end of it, or maybe WR sometime, those kinds of things, that's a way to enjoy and celebrate further. And I can appreciate that. That's hard.
Yeah. And that's one reasons why I think for me, coming out of college, I was looking at, coaching and groups and stuff. And when I had my phone call with Dathan, I saw this guy who has achieved a lot in his career, and he was so young, and he was still kind of in that kind of game. And for me, as a middle distance athlete, I kind of asked him, I said, you're a distance heavy demigod, like, you've controlled the circuit for Americans for quite a while. Like, how would you coach me to be a low 330 guy? And he's worked with Matt Centrowitz, he's worked with guys that are, he was volunteer coach at Oregon. Like, he's been around guys and he's seen it. And Dathan's so self-aware too, that it's kind of scary. Like, he knows how to kind of deal and take away from things as an athlete. And being at that level, it was just so valuable as a young guy coming out of college from a different country, not knowing what he's going to do, where he's moving. It was valuable to have someone there that he says, I've been here, I know what you're doing, just relax. So to have that is a big plus for me. I'm very, very lucky with that. And I think his advice moving forward with that first kind of context was really important for me, because I think at this point in time, like, you can get a bit carried away and then you can kind of go down track. So him reeling us in and keeping us focused on kind of the goals that are going to be sustainable for the whole year has been fantastic. So very, very, very lucky for that.
So let's talk about those sustainable goals. You mentioned that at the very end of what you just said. Like, what are these sustainable goals that you hold on to for the whole year?
For me personally, it's to make my my Australian team for the Olympic Games. I have never made an Australian team in my whole career, which is crazy. But I think obviously being over in the States and being so kind of involved with the NCAA, I haven't had much time to go home and kind of represent my country and go back to trials. I won't be able to again, obviously with COVID-19 and quarantine issues, but that's one of the main goals, sustainable goals, is to make the team. I run 3:32, but I'd like to do it again and then do it faster and keep improving on that time to make that team. And that for me is a sustainable goal, and also to run in a Diamond League and hopefully win one. I'd love to do that because I know it'd bring a smile to Dathan's face, having me be able to kind of compete at that level. He's been there so many times, and for my teammates too, they all kind of had that same goal, is to get there and to kind of make Dathan proud in one sense, but also kind of prove to ourselves that we are now a world-class team. We've run world-class times, and we should be taken seriously in that factor and be able to do it. And I think for me, I mean, I've had people talking about that race as a medal contention. I would love to think that too, but I think for me, if I make that Olympic Games, I would love to be in that final, and anything can happen in an Olympic final. So the sustainable goals are to run into a couple of Diamond Leagues later this year and run really, really fast. Hopefully, produce better times for my 1500, and then hopefully represent Australia at the Olympic Games and make the final there and see what happens. That's pretty much where I've got my list for the year.
That is not a insignificant list.
Yeah. We're like over here getting really pumped up and excited to watch you do this. We've really enjoyed watching you this year, as it's been an incredible year for you. And for all of us who are fans of you, it's exciting. It's really exciting to see you and your career and how it's progressing. I want to kind of go backward, rewind just a second to what you said about doing it for, putting a smile on Dathan's face and your team. You want to be a world-class team together. You're not the first pro that we've talked to that has brought in their training partners as part of the conversation. And I think for a lot of us outsiders to the pro world, we don't really see much of that like team aspect. And On has been unique with this, I think, because you are all sharing one another's stuff. You have photos of each other. Like I really see this team atmosphere. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how you are involved with your team?
Of course. The one thing that was kind of cool about what OAC are doing is that Dathan is very, very, there's two emphases. One is you got to train hard, you got to do the work. But the second one is culture, team culture. And when you leave college, you kind of think, okay, that's in my past. I'm a individual athlete, individual pro. This is my goals. And Dathan's kind of revamping that. He's created this culture with OAC that's so unique in the way in which we have all these international people and these Americans, mostly Midwesterns, Michigan as well, which is kind of cool to see, come through. And we develop this we're trying to develop an idea of how a running team should be, a pro team should be, because we have athletes that we all support and we all kind of get behind. I mean, I think the coolest thing recently is that we had Carlos Villarreal, who's our Mexican teammate, good friend of mine from U of A, collegiate guy. He just ran an 800 time trial on the roads in Niawat and ran 147. We had a teammate at every 100 meters, and we yelling at him. We filmed it. We had Geordie Beamish on the bike filming it. We got it all set up for him. And we knew that was good for him leading forward to racing. And like teams, I don't think, like, a lot of people don't think about that when you think about what's going to make this team better. It's not just performances, it's just having that kind of group behind you. And I think that's the one thing that makes teams succeed. And watching a lot of team sports, I noticed that the team culture is so important. And Dathan knows that too. And that's why he's taken that really under his wing. And we support each other. I mean, we like to share each other's posts. We get to know each other on a really personal level. but we also respect each other in the event that we do. Like I know Emily Oren and Leah Fallon, steeplechasers from Michigan, and I am terrified of any kind of barrier like that. I think I would probably hurt myself. What they do is incredible, and the support. Like I think Dathan made his homemade steeple because they don't have one at the Niawat track, so he made one and he painted it green. And he's got all the Niawat stuff on it, and he's got the OAC logo on it. Like he's done stuff like that. It's just that team, that culture that I thought was lost in college. He's trying to bring it back, and he's trying to get people excited to join a team, not because of the people just running fast, but the people that are making an environment that's like, cool, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that team. And it's exciting. I mean, I was excited to watch Joe run 13:06. He ran a really good 2 mile in New Balance. He's in a great position for the 10K leading up. And, you know, we work together, we train together. We're in different events, different countries, but we do I kind of feel like that 5K was a bit of a piece of me. Like, and I think the same for the 1500 is a bit of a piece of him. Like, you know, we put in the work for each other. Like he has to suffer through those short workouts, which I know as a distance guy, he's not fond of. And then I got to suffer through the distance stuff, which I'd rather do anything other than run with Joe Klecker for 18 miles. And the girls do the same thing with Alicia, and the same thing with the steeple. Carlos does the same thing with middle distance stuff, the cross training, everything. They're just, anytime someone has a result now, I notice what Dathan's magic is when we see a result, you think, oh, good for them. But for us, it's like a little piece of us is like, that was that bit of me in there. Like I felt it. I felt like that was, I mean, I'm not taking that achievement, but I feel like that was exciting to be a part of, because I feel like a bit of piece of me went into that effort, because I know, you know, I was able to support them, I was able to help them. And I think having that kind of feeling about a team is very unusual for an individual sport, particularly running. So what Dathan's doing right now is kind of revolutionary. I'd never tell it to his face because it goes straight to his head, but it's revolutionary, I think. And I'm excited to see what it develops, because we've already had so much attention from this team, from the results alone. But I think just because of the culture itself, it's going to be way more appealing to people, because they'll feel comfortable to grow and they'll know that they're supported, not just on their own self, but by teammates around the board. So I think that's what we're doing differently, and that's what I'm really excited about. And that's why I love sharing everyone's stuff. I think it's great. It's what they're doing is fantastic.
So we have so appreciated being able to follow you and the work that you're doing, and you've been sharing with us. You know, we appreciate you have come on the show here to share more in depth now, and just so excited to see how this season and, you know, ultimate goal ending late summer with, you know, Tokyo and beyond. And so hopeful for how this manifests for you, and we're going to be following and sharing with our audience as well as these things unfold. What's, if you can share, I know that you're not always able to, but what's the most immediate thing? What's next on the agenda?
I think we have a race in Eugene, a 1500, and then from there we'd probably go to Brian Clay, which is a pretty solid meet, and then from there on, Doha Diamond League and Oslo in Norway Diamond League, and then from there, obviously we have to reassess to see where we are with racing, training camp, stuff like that. Like I've got stuff with my federation that I have to do with Australia, but that's kind of the plan. I know Joe's got a big 10K coming up. The women have a really good 3K steeple down in Arizona, and Carlos is running an 800 there as well, and Geordie's looking to run a 5K in the coming months. So we've all got great races coming up. I know we'll keep everyone updated as well, but it'll be cool to see everyone kind of break out, because the training's been great. Everyone's been in a really good spot. And even with COVID, like people have just prospered under this program, and with the people that have been around, not just, you know, the individual guys and girls, but also like the staff and the people that have supported us. So we've been very, very lucky. So we're excited to move forward with that. And yeah, the next race will be probably, I think, middle of April in Eugene, or late April, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. We were actually just talking about how Hayward Field has been renovated, and this event that you're talking about, I'm guessing it's the same one, is going to debut runners racing on that brand new renovated track.
So beautiful.
I think it's that one. Yeah, I think it's that one. Oh, it's the later one. There's a couple of ones, but I think I'm definitely going to Eugene, which is exciting, because the last time I ran there, I won the NCAA championships as a sophomore. So I have a bit of a special connection to that track.
Yeah.
especially my family, because my dad's a diehard pre fan. So he loves everything Hayward. So it'll be cool to race there, and I'm excited to kind of debut Outdoor 1500 there. It's going to be awesome. Great competition there too. So
Definitely.
Well, we're so excited to watch you. We'll keep everyone updated. And thank you, Olli. Best of luck.
thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your time, and I love what you're doing. So I'm very, very happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Olli, for joining us on the A to Z Running podcast and talking us through this really unique experience that you have racing this year, because many of us are getting into it and we're looking at 2021. It's been like a while since we've had a racing season. So it was very helpful what Olli talked through. And I do want to remind you to follow Olli on his Olympic journey. And that's at Olli Hoare, which is OLLIHOARE. And of course, I'm linking that on AtoZrunning.com. And my reaction from this conversation, I think about how we can use every experience to help us learn and grow. And the race experience is unique. It is very hard to contrive the race experience in time trials on our own or in workouts. And so taking that opportunity and then afterwards, I've mentioned this before in this podcast, but reflecting on it and thinking about what I did well. And then, of course, where can I get a couple seconds? Where can I grow in this sport to help me just get a little bit better? And that's kind of the fun. That's the game of track and field and running.
Yeah, and there is so much beneath the surface there. And so in order to really truly make this practical for all of us and talk about how we make that happen, we, of course, have some great tips for you. And we're going to cover that next week. You want to stick around in the following episode for what racing season needs to be for all of us to best set ourselves up to successfully achieve our primary goal.
And that's to thrive. And it's fun to run fast too. Very fun to run fast. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week on the A to Z Running podcast.